Winter. Winter is the second season in the game of Don't Starve. Winter is also the first season in which simply standing around is dangerous. Despite winter appearing desolate and unforgiving, there is actually a lot of incentive to leave your comfortable based camp and explore, hunt, and gather. In winter, the first obvious danger to the player is, of course, the cold. While not a visible threat, the cold will slowly lower your temperature and eventually your health, lest you seek to prevent that. This can be avoided by wearing warm clothes, which will increase the time before you freeze, by carrying a thermal stone, which will increase the play's temperature if warmed up, or by staying near a fire. Staying near a fire will ensure that you never freeze. However, this playstyle will not win you any awards in terms of actually achieving anything. Additionally, of course, you will find yourself enjoying the game a lot more if you explore and hunt, rather than just sit around all the time. In addition to fire, players can craft warm clothing with beefalo wool, silk, and other ingredients depending on the specific item. Warm clothing increases the time it takes to freeze, with varying tiers of usefulness, the beefalo hat, the puffy vest, and the hibernation vest being the best in terms of insulation. However, since the hibernation vest requires a drop from Beargar, who will not spawn until the second year, this item will not be on your wishlist for the first winter. Winter gear on its own will only help you so much. The thermal stone is an incredibly useful item, which stores temperature and delays the player's body temperature as its own temperature changes. A thermal stone is crafted with 10 stones, 3 flint, and a pickaxe. However, it's worth noting that the pickaxe can have any durability, as this will not affect the outcome of the crafting recipe, so if you have any 3% pickaxes lying around, now is a good time to use them. To be used, a thermal stone can either sit in the player's inventory as they stand next to a fire, or dropped on the ground. A thermal stone on the ground will heat up much faster than one in the player's inventory, but the stone can still be heated up in a player's inventory if the player stands near a fire for long enough. In Don't Starve Together, thermal stones have durability, enough to last being heated up and then cooled down 8 times, although this process can be reversed by repairing them with a sewing kit. Thermal stones can be cooled down in an icebox or by an endothermic fire, which can prove useful in summer, so be sure to hold on to them even after winter ends. You can also light trees on fire in order to warm up without having to waste materials on a campfire. Simply use a torch to ignite a tree. Since most characters can last 3 seconds without taking damage from fire, duck in and out to avoid getting burnt. This tactic will rapidly raise your temperature, is cheap, and highly convenient. If your character has a beard, such as Wilson or Weber, be sure to have a fully grown one by the time winter rolls around. Weber can shave once before his beard grows back before winter, but Wilson cannot shave once if he wants to have a full beard when winter begins. A combination of all of these tactics is the best way to survive the cold, although it's still more than possible to get along with just burning trees on fire and using a thermal stone. Food is, of course, still going to be at least somewhat of an issue during winter. By the end of autumn, you should have a decent food source set up, be it berry farms, an animal farm, or a combination. However, be warned that many previously reliable food sources will no longer yield during the extreme temperatures. Honey cannot be produced from bee boxes, as the bees will not leave their hives. Butterflies do not spawn, neither do frogs nor mosquitoes, as ponds will freeze over. In addition, all plants except for spiky bushes will cease to grow during the winter time. However, all structures and plants that produce food or items will still retain their harvest if it's not picked, so it's always a good idea to leave a few items on the plant in case you need them during winter. In addition, all foods spoil 25% slower due to the low temperatures, meaning that food with a default spoilage of 10 days can last the entire season if stored in an icebox. While it's harder to actually get food in winter, the slower spoil rate allows for easier stockpiling. Koalefants are still plentiful as usual during the winter months, meaning that they are a good food source, as the 8 meat and 1 winter koalefant trunk that they drop can last you a long time, especially if made into meatballs or another hunger-efficient crockpot recipe. The winter koalefant trunk can also be made into the puffy vest, a second-tier winter protection item, although it occupies the body slot. In general, try to maximize the amount of saturation you get from foods that you already have. Meatballs are going to be your friend.
A second threat to the player is the addition of blue or ice hounds, which will appear in addition to normal hounds during a hound attack. Blue hounds deal 30 damage, which is 10 more than normal hounds, have only 100 health, and cause a freezing effect when they die. The freezing effect alone will not be enough to fully encase the player in ice, but if another ice hound dies near the player within a short period of time, the player will be frozen. Blue hounds drop a monster meat, 2 hound's teeth, and a 20% chance for a blue gem. This makes them a much more reliable source of teeth than regular hounds. Overall, blue hounds are actually rather advantageous, as they can provide players with more drops than normal hounds, in addition to their lower health value.
But beware, for hounds pale in comparison to the great beast that many tell tale of. a beast with a huge singular eye that haunts those eager for the spring. Deerchops is the first threat in Don't Starve that can really catch you off guard. Even if you've fought her before, she can appear at the worst of times, when you're at low health, when a hound wave comes, or even when you're fighting another boss or enemy. Deerchops also has some unique abilities, such as freezing the player and destroying structures when not attacking players, which can definitely pose a unique and perhaps frustrating challenge for new players. Unless the player has been approached by a tree guard or gotten too friendly with a tier 3 spider nest, Deerchops will most likely be a new player's first boss encounter. Deerchops is very different to tree guards and spider queens in that she will destroy the player's base should she be left alone. This means that players will have to either face her, lead her away, or face the consequences of getting their base destroyed. Deerchops can be led toward any creature, as she will attack pretty much anything except for other monsters on sight. Beware, as leading Deerchops to somewhere like a pig village could lead to a large amount of destruction. This means that the recommended method of approach is attacking Deerchops yourself. Fear not, however, killing Deerchops is a very doable task, no matter the character you're playing as. There are two main methods of fighting in Don't Starve: tanking and kiting. Kiting involves dodging the enemy's attacks and landing in a certain number of hits during the safe time in between each attack. Each enemy has a different kiting pattern to follow, but in the case of Deerchops, it is a relatively simple one with 2 hits in between each attack. If you're playing as a character who has an innate speed boost, such as Wolfgang or WX78, try and use this during the fight as it will help out greatly. If you've constructed a walking cane, more on that later, you can switch to it in between attacking Deerchops. This will give you an extra edge in the fight as you can land in more hits, but is a rather tricky maneuver to pull off. Overall, any sort of speed boost that you can get helps immensely during a boss fight such as this, as it will give you much more of a leeway to avoid attacks, and may even assist you in landing extra hits, resulting in a higher DPS. If you're kiting, it's still a good idea to wear armor, as getting hit by a Deerchops unarmored will deal a hefty 75 damage straight to your health bar. Since armor stacking only affects 1 armor piece max in Don't Starve Together, you will only need to wear 1 piece of armor. A football helmet or log suit will suffice for the most part. In terms of weapons, a dark sword is most ideal, simply because it does the most damage, but a handbat crafted with 2 big meat, 1 pea skin and some sticks, or a tentacle spike, which is dropped by tentacles, will also do the job just fine. Since kiting Deerchops is slower than tanking her, you will often experience bouts of insanity during the fight. Every time a shadow creature spawns, try to separate it from Deerchops, kill it, and then return to the fight. While kiting, you shouldn't need any healing items or food, as even if you do get hit, your armor will negate most of the damage. Tanking is the secondary method of hunting in Don't Starve, and while it's much more resource intensive than kiting, it is a lot faster, meaning that you won't have to worry about the appearance of shadow creatures during the fight, assuming your sanity was already at a stable minimum before you engaged in combat. Wolfgang require a minimum of 2 football helmets to tank Deerchops while using a handbat, Wolfgang only requiring 1 due to his raw damage output. Tanking Deerchops also requires you to build a campfire underneath yourself to stop her freezing attack from affecting you. The choice between tanking or kiting basically depends on your current situation. If you're not in a good spot, with low amounts of healing, food and materials to make armor, consider kiting, or leading Deerchops somewhere where she can get distracted. Only lead Deerchops away, however, if you're in a really dire state, and will gladly lose the Deerchops eyeball in exchange for safety. Otherwise, feel free to tank away. It is a lot faster than kiting after all, and there's no reason not to do it if you can spare the resources. Only 2 other threats are posed towards the player during winter that they must seek out themselves, one of them being the McTusk and Son hunting party. What they are hunting exactly still remains a mystery to even the most experienced of survivors. McTusk, his son, and 2 ice hounds will guard their respective walrus camp during winter. McTusk himself tries to stay away from the player and will fire blow darts at them occasionally. Unlike the players, McTusk's blow darts only deal 33 damage to the player. We Tusk will also try to avoid the player, as well as whistling, which causes the hound to begin attacking the player. It's generally better to stage your attack on the walruses during their dusk time, as since the 2 ice hounds sleep outside, you can easily finish them off before engaging with McTusk himself. Once you've cleared out the 2 hounds, start chasing McTusk away from his hut, all the while tanking the darts he fires at you. Bringing at least 1 football helmet is recommended. You shouldn't need too many healing items. Keep on chasing McTusk until he reaches a certain distance from his house. At this point he will, stupidly enough, turn around a full 180 and start walking back towards his house again, completely ignoring the player. Take full advantage of this maneuver and slay the blubbery beast. If you have a fresh handbat or better, you should be able to kill McTusk easily without him attacking the player again. McTusk and co will respawn every 2.5 days, and if you haven't located more than 1 camp, be sure to capitalize on their spawn rate and get at least 1 walking cane for everyone playing on the server. Walking canes give a huge 25% speed boost when held, with infinite durability, meaning that they will speed up a lot of the game. They can also be used as an aid while kiting enemies in correspondence with a high damage weapon. Tam O'Shanters give good sanity regen and medium insulation levels, which is great if you want to avoid going insane, especially during winter.
Perhaps you have progressed to the point where you can swim in the spoils of war. Perhaps you have grown too tired of the season of winter, its snow-covered landscapes no longer sparking your interest or awareness. Fear not, for beyond your immediate vision lies a formidable foe who happened to carelessly leave behind his sack. Klaus is a secondary boss during winter who can pose a challenge to already experienced players. He uses the aid of 2 gem-enhanced no-ideas in order to cast freezing and burning spells at the player, as well as smacking them with his mighty claws. However, don't raise your weapons just yet. First you have to locate Klaus's sack, left behind in either the deciduous biome characterized by orange leaves coating the ground and the residence of the pigs, or the mosaic biome which is characterized by mishmash of turf surrounding holes in the land. Finding Klaus's sack may take some time, so be sure to set apart an adequate amount of time to locate his bag. Once you have located Klaus's sack, attempt to unlock it with a no-idea antler, obtained by chasing a no-idea in order to make it walk into a tree or other obstacles. No-idea can be located wandering in herds in deciduous and mosaic biome, similar to the loot stash. But be warned, before engaging in combat with Klaus, there are certainly some supplies you will need. If you're not playing as Wolfgang, it's recommended that you bring at least 6 football helmets, 3 dark swords or a fresh handbat, a walking cane, and 400 to 500 points worth of healing, which is equivalent to just over 10 pierogies. If you are playing as Wolfgang, you will only need maximum of 200 healing, equivalent to 5 pierogies, 3 football helmets, and a walking cane, and 2 dark swords or a handbat. Additionally, you will need to set up a small arena around Klaus's sack. Bring 5 cobblestone turf to lay down in order to assist you in dodging Klaus's attack in the second phase, as well as 2 fire pits to keep you warm in the crisp air, and some fuel to keep them at a high level. Once you are prepared to take on Klaus, attempt to use the no-idea antler on the loot stash. The action will fail and Klaus will approach you from outside your view. During the fight, never kill any of the deer. If this happens, Klaus will go into enraged mode, which will increase his health and damage by 3 folds, as well as granting him large resistance to all damage. There is no additional reward for defeating Klaus in this state apart from bragging rights, so it's best to avoid. In the first phase, run in, dodge 2 swipe attacks and then attack Klaus. After the first attack, he may or may not swipe again, depending how long the player took to avoid his previous attack. To be on the safe side, be prepared to dodge second double swipe no matter how long the previous attack took. After dodging the 2 attacks, keep on hitting Klaus until he summons a fire or ice pit. This area of effect maneuver will drastically increase or lower the player's temperature and set you on fire or freeze you if you stay in its radius for too long. Lead Klaus away from the AoE attack and then repeat this pattern until he dies. When Klaus reaches 50% health, he will summon 2 Crampi for each player fighting him. This is the most difficult attack, and it's best to just tank the 2 Crampi, but still be sure to keep them separated from Klaus. Once Klaus dies, use this brief moment of peace to eat, heal, and rekindle fires, and then prepare to fight Klaus's second phase. Klaus's second phase will commence after he is resurrected from a life-giving amulet. His second phase is most likely identical to his first, except that Klaus performs a jump attack after every spell cast and sometimes in replacement of his second swipe attack. In order to avoid this attack, keep at a distance from Klaus after avoiding his spell cast, run back in, and then run out again in order to avoid his swipes. If Klaus performs a chomp attack instead of a second swipe, you will need about 50% speed boost in order to avoid it, such as a walking cane and a cobblestone path. Once you have felled the beast, use the stag antler dropped by Klaus in order to open the loot stash and gain access to 4 bundling wraps. The bundle will contain some random boss drops including blueprints and a 10% chance for a Krampus sack. Relish in your victory, you've earned it.
After winter comes spring, spring being the only other mild season along with autumn. Spring doesn't require arduous amounts of preparation, one can simply make an umbrella and football helmet and be done with it. If you manage to kill Deerchops, the umbrella will be a large aid in avoiding the rain. Even without this item, rain isn't too much of a bother. At worst you'll encounter sanity drain, tool slipping, and lower fuel efficiency, which won't be too much of a detriment. And that pretty much wraps up this video. I really appreciate you sitting through all of it. If you wish, please feel free to leave a comment with any questions, queries, or feedback on the video. Any of these three is greatly appreciated. Again, thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you next time.